Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Hostetter. I know I'm a new face for everybody on this call for the most part. I'm the principal long-range planner for the town and county, and I'm relatively new-ish here. I've been here, this will be 2 years now. I've been here at the county and town. And we are continuing on the work that the team did for the housing nexus analysis last summer. So it just took us a while to get rolling again on this project. But I'll do a little bit more of an intro here, but before that, I'd love to go around and quickly do a name. Just give me your name and your background, your affiliation, if you're representing building, maybe chamber, etc. And I will just to make it easier, I'll call everybody out. And I'll just go by my list on my screen here. So April, you're actually first on the line here.
Hey everyone, good to see lots of familiar faces, except for Jennifer. I don't know you, but looking forward to meeting you. April Norton, I'm the housing director.
Wendy.
Hi, Wendy Sullivan. I'm one of the consultants helping with the process with WSW Consulting and helped manage the needs assessment and nexus study last year.
Thanks, Wendy. Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. Ashley Cannett. I'm a principal with Economic and Planning Systems. Lots of familiar faces here, and I'm appreciative of all of your time. EPS was the lead on the technical nexus study.
Thanks, Ashley. Bruce.
Bruce Mean with Logan Simpson, and I'll be assisting with facilitation, especially with the gym and stakeholder group, and been facilitating in Jackson for over 10 years. And I only have that much gray hair, so it's a good sign.
Jennifer. Jennifer, did you want to introduce yourself?
I can do Jen's. Well,
Okay.
Jen Gardner. It's hard for me to do her voice, but Jen Gardner is a senior associate who works with me. She specializes in housing codes throughout the West. So code person. So and a nice one. So and there she is. All right, Jen, don't say anything. You've been introduced.
Mackie.
Hi, Meki Jaidi. I own various businesses here in town, including Outpost, which is a vacation rental company, Snake River Roasting Company, which has a cafe and a roastery down on South Park Drive, and some various other businesses as well.
Great, nice to meet you. Paul.
Hey everybody, I'm Paul Anthony, Planning Director for the town of Jackson. Looking forward to working with everyone on this and over the next coming months.
Thanks, Paul. Rick.
Rick Howe, President and CEO of the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce.
Sounds good. Snow.
Hi everyone, I'm Snow. I'm an associate at Economic and Planning Systems, and I assisted Ashley with the technical study last year.
Good to meet you, Snow. Tyler.
Hi everyone, I'm a developer here in town. Also driving right now, so I will get my camera on here soon.
All right. Let's see, my list keeps moving around. Josh, I don't know that we got to you.
No. Hi guys, Josh Haney. I'm a builder in town, was with Shaw Construction when we met last year, and I'm now with Two Ocean Builders.
Great. Well, nice to meet you, Josh. Let's see. Sky, I know Sky has got his hands full right now. I don't know if you want to do a little introduction.
Hello, Sky Shell, and this is Isla.
Oh.
And we're just going to be listening here today, but I'm on the board of Shelter JH, which is the housing advocacy group here in Jackson, and been taking a bit of parental leave, but trying to stay in the loop. So thanks for bearing with me, and I'll probably have to drop early, but I'll try to catch up afterwards. And it's good to see everybody.
Thanks so much. All right, I think did I miss anybody? Just yell out if I did. I think we caught everybody. So you all got an agenda on the calendar invitation, and I'd just like to start out with a couple things. This is the first of 3 stakeholder meetings that we're going to have with you all. Our goal with this project is to pick up where the Nexus study left off, and we're doing some updating to some of the figures because it's been a little while, and carry that forward into this policy work to our end goal, having proposed LDR amendments this late summer, early fall, ideally getting through hearings by or in September if we can. So this group is going to be an important piece of that in providing feedback to us as we develop that policy. So we will have 2 more meetings with you all. We're moving pretty quick on this. The process will include the town and county through joint information meetings. We're going to do a 2-day working session, a joint information meeting to go through policy, and again have a draft LDR amendment proposed late summer. So I just wanted to mention that, and you'll see right after this meeting, I'll send out some dates for the next 2 stakeholder meetings sooner than later. We're looking at the week of March 20th and then the week of April 17th, just but I'll send that out to you all, maybe with a doodle poll to try and pick the best day. I mean, everybody's super busy. So with that, I want to turn it over to our team, Wendy, to take it over. And Ashley, I know there's a PowerPoint it sounds like we're going to be sharing to give a little refresher and remind everybody about where we're going.
Yeah, do you want me to take it right away, Wendy, or do you want to introduce the team at all? Or oops, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. So no, thanks Ryan. Thanks for kind of updating us and where we're at. Yeah, I just, I'll introduce our team really quick. So I think I remember most of you. There's a couple new faces, so thanks for showing up again, and thanks for the newcomers. Basically, I'll be sort of the front person managing this contract from the client, from our side, from the consultant side. I'm kind of, my role in this process is to bring more of kind of the policy outlook, to provide information as as we talk about different options and kind of pros cons from what we've seen in other communities, as well as obviously hearing from you what's working and not in your own. Bruce Megan is here with Logan Simpson, which I think a lot of as he said, he'll mostly be dealing with the facilitation and helping with the policy framing, and then with the actual write-up. And then Ashley, who I think you all know, is great at the technical aspect of things. And so she's going to be carrying forward with all of that. So she'll be taking the front here on this PowerPoint, and we look forward to a great discussion. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy.
Sure.
So I think we've already had a very productive morning. We have done team introductions or reintroductions, so kudos to us. We'll start off just by, it has been a little while. A lot of us know each other, but it has been a little while. And Rick, I'm just looking at you. I know that you're at least the one person on this call who I don't know very well yet. So acknowledging that. But we'll just talk a little bit about where we've been with the study. We'll revisit and kind of review what the role of the stakeholder group is. And then we'll get kind of right into the technical work and just remind everyone of where we left off last April, in April of 2022. And then, as Ryan noted, that it has been a little while. And so these data sources that we rely on continue to get updated, which is a good thing. But in order to have this study be as fresh as possible for the presentation to the gym in June and then implementation, we're trying to update those things that it makes sense to update. And we need your input to do so. And so that's really what the goal of today is. And then we'll talk about next steps as well. Do you feel like you've said this already, Wendy? Because I kind of made you go before you got to your slide.
I think so. Yeah, and then you also will go into more detail on the process. So
okay. All right, so if at any point anyone has any questions about process, please, or anything, just please feel free to raise your hand. I don't mind being interrupted. And let's just get into it. So we're reconvening this group and appreciative of everyone continuing on and appreciative of new members as well. But we're really trying to gather updates to key assumptions, and we're looking for guidance as we move forward towards trying to figure out what this final affordable housing mitigation and impact fee schedule is going to look like. We know that, we're not the final decision makers, but we're trying to frame up the issues, frame up the questions in a way that makes sense, and that everyone's sort of on board with understanding how we got to that point. So our role together is to review and understand the methodology and key assumptions. And I'll pause right here and say that I am anticipating that most of you who have been through this with us remember kind of the basics, but Rick and a few others who I think are brand new, if at any point you feel like a sort of one-on-one conversation would be helpful to go through the prior Nexus study or the prior GYM presentation, I'd like to make myself available for that. So please feel free to reach out if you need that. So we're looking to this group to review and understand the methodology and understand the key assumptions. Looking for this group to offer technical assistance and help us frame up and inform policy direction. And then already members of the community have been helpful in this regard, but looking for assistance with acquiring local data and any sort of research or studies that we may want to bring to bear. And for example, Brett McPeak, who's not on the Nexus stakeholder group, but many of you know, provides the MLS data and whatnot to help us keep this fresh. So both Ryan and Wendy have mentioned that we've got 3 stakeholder meetings planned. Today is to just review where we are, confirm that development prototype that we talked about last year, and discuss cost updates. So glad for those of you who are developers and builders to be on the call today. And then for the next meeting, we will take all of those inputs, fully refresh the model, and we'll be at a position where we can discuss the updated and final maximum mitigation fee levels. And at that point, we can start talking about or rediscussing in some ways feasibility and fee level considerations, and we can start introducing some policy implementation considerations. And then we're really going to try to bring all of that home in the 3rd stakeholder meeting. So we'll confirm what we've heard, confirm direction, and make sure that we're collectively on the same page before heading to the GYM, which we've scheduled for the first June 5th and 6th, I believe. Okay, so any questions before I kind of dive into technical analysis? No. Okay. So as a reminder, when we approached the study last time around, there were some pretty big changes we were trying to make from a policy perspective. So this is just a reminder of some of those decisions we made as a group. And we were wanting to align the zoning code and the mitigation program land use categories to minimize wherever possible the need for independent calculations. So we're wanting just as transparent of a program as possible so that we weren't having to do all these sort of side calculations in order to implement the program. We also made a decision to distinguish between single family development occurring in the town versus single family development occurring elsewhere in the county. And we eliminated this logarithmic relationship that was just challenging for the layperson to really wrap their heads around. The data was there, but it was hard for the average person to just sort of understand mathematically what was happening there. We also decided to aggregate several of the non-residential land use categories. So retail, service, and restaurant, we all brought those together into one category because we wanted to reduce any change of use concerns that folks who are at the implementation side of things were observing. And then there was also some interest in making sure that we were expanding the analysis to include impacts on non-brick and mortar employment. And so we used a platform called Implan, which allows us to, sort of track economic patterns throughout the economy, and therefore we were able to include some of these non-brick and mortar employment impacts when we start on the residential side of things. And then we made updates to the affordable gap analysis, and we were trying to reflect the most recent development costs at the moment. And one of the trends that everyone had been observing is that development costs had been increasing much more quickly than incomes. Maybe at this point we've seen development costs the increase has slowed maybe, but that same pattern is persisting, I believe. So that's just a reminder of some of the big changes we were trying to make last time around. And here is where we landed. And the figures in front of you are the result of the technical analysis. They're the maximum justifiable mitigation requirements and fees. We never at any point said to you or the public or decision electeds or anything like that, that this is where the fee program or the mitigation program was going to land. Rather, this is just the result of the technical work. And then it's the policy, we have the policy decisions ahead of us, the policy and implementation decisions ahead of us to figure out where all of this is going to actually land. So we considered, in looking at the impact, I'll start with non-residential here, and in looking on the impact of new non-residential development, we looked at these 5 land use categories: office, industrial, retail, service, restaurant, lodging, and then institutional recreation and amusement. And for every 1,000 square feet of new development, we, I'll just use office as an example, we identified that 0.72 households would be created or supported, and that household would be falling into our up to 150% of the median family income category. In other words, needing quite a bit of support to participate in the housing market and to be able to afford housing. So that translates to a fee, or there's a way of quantifying what it would cost to provide support for that household and to develop housing for that household at those affordability levels. And that fee translated to around $350,000 per 1,000 square feet, or $351 per square foot. That's an extraordinarily high fee, and not a fee that the community would probably ever charge. It would stop all development. And so here is exactly the work we have ahead of us in the coming sessions. So I won't really walk through all of these, but you can see that there's very similar patterns between office and retail, service, restaurant in terms of the mitigation requirement, 0.72 versus 0.7. Institutional recreation amusement is the lowest, really because employment density is the lowest. And then a lot of similarities between industrial and lodging too, in terms of that employment density. So these are the numbers that we arrived at last spring. These are the numbers that we presented to the GIM in April 2022. And on the residential side, it's the same type of analysis. We just get there in a slightly different way. And here we're looking at the impact on the need for workforce housing with the development of new market rate multifamily or single family development. So here are the land use categories, probably aren't surprising. We've got a multifamily unit. And then, as I mentioned before, we take single family and we looked at single family development in the town versus the rest of the county. So the way to read this is, if I look at the multifamily column here, a new unit of market rate multifamily development creates the need for 0.07 of an affordable unit. And that fee on a per unit basis would be around $35,000. That's what it would cost to fully mitigate that impact. Or on a per square foot basis, that fee would be around $30, $29, $30 a square foot. And you can see that the impact is higher for a single family unit in the town and higher still for a single family unit in the county. Many of you might remember that the reason for that is because the households occupying these market rate units have different income profiles, and a household in a single family unit in the county on average tends to have a much higher income, and so their spending patterns are such that they're spending more in the local economy and the regional economy on goods and services, and those goods and service, and in order to provide those goods and services, retailers are expanding their hiring or building new space to accommodate those spending patterns. So any questions about where we landed last time? This is still sort of refresher, but I realize it's detailed, so pause there for just a second. Okay, moving on. So here's where moving forward now. There were, those of you who were in the mix will recall, we spent a lot of time talking about the data sources available to us and the assumptions needed to support the study. And we did our best in all cases to use publicly available, transparent data sources, right? So that it would be easy to come back and update these assumptions later down the road. And so there are a number of data sources. We relied on census. We relied on the affordable income limits that are published on the housing department's webpage and that come down through HUD and get sort of manipulated. We relied on data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We need inputs from multiple listing service because that affects our assumptions around market rate household incomes. And then, of course, we use this input-output model called IMPLAN. So we have done everything that we could without your help, or that we need just a little bit more time on some things also. But so anything that was a census-derived assumption, we've gone ahead and updated. The income limits were updated, and I am a little, April, you might know if you're here, but I think there's a chance that they'll be updated again during the course of the study. So we'll just try to stay on top of that.
Yeah, they'll likely come out mid to late April.
Mid to late April. Okay.
Yeah, and we anticipate a bit of a jump, but 6 to 8% maybe.
Okay, we'll think a little bit more about how to anticipate that, because at that point the numbers will probably be sort of final, but we don't want to. Well, let's keep talking about that. Bureau of Labor Statistics, those numbers get updated periodically. We have done that technical work. We just received the multiple listing service data from Brett last week. And so Snow and I need a little bit of time to go through that. And so that's an update that you'll see in the next, reflected in the next stakeholder meeting. And then IMPLAN is it's a pretty, we are not going to update that. We're going to assume that we're going to use the same relationships that were in place last time around. And there's a bit of a lag with that data anyway. And so this didn't, as we looked at changes that we're seeing in IMPLAN in other studies, it wasn't one that we were worried. We weren't worried that it was going to really shift things very much. And so we've kept those relationships the same while we're adjusting all of the demographic data that that needs updating through census and BLS and whatnot. On the affordable development prototype, this is really the heart of what I want to talk a little bit more about today. We need to update our land values because that data is now, more than a year old. And then this group was very helpful in terms of coming up with the development cost assumptions. And so we'll review those assumptions. I'm hoping for some input on that today or in follow-up emails, discussions. Okay, so we'll just I just want to show you briefly how some of the changes, where there are significant changes and where there really aren't significant changes. So with respect to household sizes and income, those top three items, average household size, workers per household, and jobs per employee, we've updated those and pretty modest shifting, I would say. The average household size is just a smidge smaller, 2.47 to 2.45. It's not going to move the needle very much. Excuse me. The number of workers per household decreased a little bit based on the updated census data from 1.9 to 1.76. And then the jobs per employee has stayed the same at 1.16 jobs per employee. And then with respect to household maximum incomes, these are the updated numbers from the housing department. And just focusing on that median family income, 100% MFI, we went from 104,000 per household to 110, nearly 111,000 per household. So we have seen a bit of a shift there. And with respect to the employment and wages, this is the BLS data. And those of you with really good memories might recall that this is actually, there are hundreds of calculations related to the BLS data because we look across industries, across occupation. We're looking at the wages of various occupations across industries. And if you imagine a matrix of all the industries and all the occupations, there's a lot there. So we didn't want to throw all those thousands of numbers up on a screen and ask you to focus on them. So we just kind of stepped back a little bit to give you the high level picture. And one of the things that we've noticed here, and it's something that this group was aware of last spring, is that we've seen quite a big jump in the wages per employee. So if you look down at Teton, the Teton County numbers, our average wages per employee went from an average of 59,000 to 73,000. So that's quite a jump, and it's something that folks were noticing. You know, I remember Mekki, even, not to call you out, Mekki, but like saying, you know, like, hey, I have to pay my employees a lot more. And so it's just something people were aware of, and the data is bearing it out now. There will be industries and occupations that are, you know, higher and lower. This is just the average, but wanted to, in general, just share that trend. Okay. So that's sort of demographic, you know, the socioeconomic demographic piece of it. I'm going to move into the affordable development prototype. And I am not expecting that there will be any changes to this prototype. What we're after here is identifying a product type that can be built that represents an efficient way to achieve affordable housing in the region. So as cost-effective a prototype, or as cost-effective a product type as possible, is what we're after here. And so we worked with this group, we worked with the county to make sure that that this is something that could be built from a regulatory perspective. And what we're envisioning here is a 3-story multifamily apartment building with tuck under parking. And so the density that we're envisioning here is around 40 units to the acre, each unit size being around 1,000 square feet gross, maybe 900 square feet when you kind of net out shared laundry area or hallway, other common areas. Within those 900 square feet per unit, that would be a 2-bedroom unit. And then just based on local sort of rules of thumb parameters, that 2-bedroom unit would be occupied by 2 people. And that unit would require 1.5 parking spaces. So I'm not expecting any changes here, but I will just pause and ask and see if anyone's has any sort of other thoughts on that. Okay. So if you imagine that prototype, that product type, the next thing is for us to sort of figure out, well, what does it cost to develop that new unit? And so here are the parameters or the line items that we had studied last time together. We want a total development cost that includes land, direct costs, indirect costs, and a developer profit. I'm expecting that from April, maybe others, there will be some updated appraisals, and those appraisals often have comps in them, and collectively that can be a pretty useful way of getting at the most current land value data. That remain a fair assumption? April, you can share some of that.
Yep, I have a couple of new ones I can share with you.
Okay, I needed you to take longer to answer so I could drink more coffee, but thank you. Okay, and then, so we'll update that assumption. I actually don't know if they've gone up or down, but I presume they haven't gone down. And then within direct costs, or within the direct cost category, we had acknowledged that there's some site preparation work typically, and so we'd put that at around $10 a square foot. The direct construction costs per gross square foot were around $350 a square foot. This is materials and labor. The parking construction costs, we wanted to, so we're imagining tuck under parking, you know, it's not structured, but nor is it just simply surface street parking. So there are costs associated with it. We put that at $10,000 a space. And that brought our total direct costs, or our subtotal direct cost per unit, to around 376,000. And then we had indirect costs at around 25%, and that's your architecture, your engineering, your fees, permits, financing, marketing, if applicable, those types of things. And then the developer return is, you know, hard to pick a specific number there, but where we wanted to land was a number at which a developer would be like, hey, the reward here begins to balance or offset some of the risks that I'm undertaking, and this is a project I'm interested in pursuing. So all in there, we are looking at a total cost per unit of around $735,000. So curious, for those on the call who are kind of in this every day, curious, just you can speak specifically about these numbers, or even just generally what you've observed about your development costs in the last year. I'll just open it up to anyone who feels like they might have some input to share.
Hi, everyone. This is Tyler. I think the changes in the economy are definitely starting to hurt us. That cap rate of 4.5 might be moving up. And if it goes to a 5% cap, that developer return is probably going to be about 4%. So just, it's definitely making it harder with interest rates and everything right now. But I haven't seen construction costs coming down yet.
Stabilizing at all, or?
Yeah, I would think
Still
so. Maybe
increasing?
Josh can
Okay.
speak to that, but I think more stable.
I'd say that the rate of escalation is coming down, but I wouldn't say we're quite at stabilization, or definitely not decline. The one thing that jumps out at me, and I'm sure I provided input on this, the site preparation per square foot seems extremely low. $10 per square foot would be an existing greenfield site with no demolition, utilities already there. So you might look at that, but I mean, as labor is the driving input on those construction costs, it's still going up from what I've seen.
Yeah, our other project we're about to break ground on 48 units. The cost per foot is almost 500 per foot.
Just hard costs, just labor,
Yeah, hard
materials.
costs. Yep.
And that 48 unit project, is that's a multifamily? What type of?
Yeah, it's kind of what you're looking at. It's 1 acre. We have 48 units, 1 acre. It's a tax credit project.
Oh. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if that sounds so relevant that if there's anything more you can share on that, or just even if you're holding that project in your mind, which clearly you are, that sounds like a really important comp.
Yeah, I can dig up maybe even after this and look back to compare exactly, but we're just under 500 per foot for hard cost.
Tyler, can you share with them your pro forma from, let's say, 9 months ago versus your pro forma that you most recently updated before closing? Because I think that would provide some additional insight.
Yeah, for sure. I can go back and dig it up. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but yeah, we're up $1.5 million to 2 million in cost.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful, because I'm thinking either we can kind of go back line by line and reevaluate each assumption, or if there is a general, an increase that's occurred, it's, we're up 8% relative to a year ago, or whatever it is. That's another way of thinking about it. So I'd be interested to sort of see those trends. With that project, Tyler, and to kind of relate back to Josh's point about the site prep costs, was that a clean site, or is that like a demo and rebuild?
We have a demo, but We have a demo there, but it's really not that bad, because it's a flat site, obviously around here we've got hillsides and stuff. It's not unreasonable, but yeah, I think it's probably more than the 10 per square foot.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Tyler. I don't know that there are others on the call who will have like specific real experience with this, but I don't want to not listen to anyone else who might have some thoughts. Okay. Well, Tyler, if you can send that, I'd be really appreciative. I think that's going to be useful. It's not often that you get someone with like real experience building exactly that prototype pretty much. So
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Okay, thank you. And then, so that's on the development cost side of things. It doesn't appear to me, just based on this conversation, that that number $735,000 is going to go down in this round, up likely. Which, all things being equal, and we know that things are shifting around, right, on the income side and the demographic side, but if all things are equal except for this development cost, what we see is a greater subsidy, more of a subsidy being needed to provide these units to income restricted households, which just further, even if the mitigation stays the same in terms of the number of households needed to mitigate the impact of the new development, the cost of that is going up and has an impact on the maximum technical fee. So that's sort of how, you turn one thing and how the levers go. I want to talk also about these other assumptions. You both talked a bit about the capitalization rate that might be inching up a bit. And we'll take a look at CoStar and just sort of see what we can find in that regard. But something more like 5% it's a little bit more consistent with what we're seeing elsewhere. Any further thoughts on those annual operating expenses? I'm just wondering if inflation has had an impact there, if you're seeing those go up at all. So it's on a per unit per year basis.
So it's 8,500 per unit. Is that?
That's the idea there, yeah.
Give me 1 second. That seems pretty close. That's in line.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. I'm gonna just, unless anyone has anything else there, I think we're kind of wrapped up on this point. I'll need some follow-up. But I think we're done with the discussion part. Anything else, anyone? Okay. Okay, so next steps. So we're going to, Snow and I are going to be looking at the MLS data. We're going to be looking at the incomes needed to support, to occupy this newly constructed development in the region. And we're going to be taking any sort of adjustments to the development cost assumptions and incorporating those into the model as well. So at the next stakeholder meeting, we're going to have revised maximum nexus justified mitigation requirements and fees for the group to take a look at. And we'll be in the same point then that we were sort of last April. And we're going to start thinking about what is the right approach to determining the final mitigation requirements and fee levels. And last time around, we talked about a number of options. There's no like right answer because it's a policy decision. But some approaches that people take are, well, we don't want the fees to be, let's just talk fees, not mitigation requirements, but we don't want the fees to be too much higher than what they are right now. And so you might think about the comparison relative to where they are right now. You might think of the fees as being a certain percentage of development costs or something like that. That's another way of thinking about it. You might think about them with respect to peer jurisdictions or other communities. And I think there are just so few communities in, Wyoming or the region with these fees that might be challenging. But there are a number of ways of getting at it, and we'll start to think about some of those options. And then as a group, I'm so appreciative of Bruce and Jen being on this call because they're going to help facilitate a conversation with this group around beginning to identify policy and implementation considerations. So I'm going to give you the technical stuff you need to start talking about all of these things, and then Bruce is going to help us have a productive conversation about that. And as part of those conversations, I just wanted to, I don't know, I think I didn't share this with the gym. I think it was sort of a backup slide that I didn't end up needing last spring. And there are a lot of numbers on here, but we had put this slide together last spring to try to illustrate how the mitigation requirements and the fees had changed over time. And so down at the bottom is the 2022 EPS employment generation numbers. And that's where we landed as of last April. And the line right up above is the 2021 affordable workforce housing standards that had been in effect sort of town of Jackson. And so you can see just right off the bat there where things were headed from where things were in the town and county versus what the technical work was suggesting the maximum would be. So let me just talk about one of these to help you read the table a little bit. If I look at that office category, the program that is in place right now, maybe it's been adjusted a little bit within the last year, I'm not sure, but the program that's in place right now said that for every 10,000 square feet of new office development, 2.47 units of affordable housing would be required. And that translated to an in lieu fee amount. Well, it didn't translate because it was adjusted down by policy sort of fiat, but the fee was around $86 a square foot. What we found in our study was that 2.47 increased to 7.2, meaning that the same amount of office development was having a much bigger impact on the need for affordable housing in the community. And then the maximum fee was $351 a square foot. And you can just see where the increasing development costs relative to incomes has had a very substantial impact. And again, that's not to say that's where the fees will land at all, but I think we're looking at something, potentially within this range. Except that these 2022 numbers we're in the process of updating right now. So this is that history on the commercial side. We did the same thing on the residential side. You can see just focusing on multifamily apartments, for example, the mitigation requirement went from around 0.05, and we were studying, or our results were indicating that it would take about 0.07, around 12,500 per unit to a maximum justifiable of around 35,000 per unit. And again, that's just the maximum justifiable. So I think I'll just leave it there. Hopefully that sets us up for our conversation next time. Tyler, I look forward to hearing or seeing some of that data from you. And Josh, if there's anything specifically you want to share that you think might be useful, I'd appreciate that as well. And then Snow and I will rush and kind of get the technical study all wrapped up so that we've got some final numbers to share next time. And Rick and Melissa, I see that you've called in. If this is if you're just swimming in it and you've got no idea, please reach out to Ryan or Wendy, and I'll be happy to help out a bit. Or anyone, if anyone needs a refresher, but I know that Rick and Melissa, it's newer to Rick and Melissa.
Hey, Ashley, before next meeting, can you send out whatever your presentation is going to be? Will you send it out to give people time to think about things? And I think that we could have a more informed conversation that way. Be super helpful.
Yeah, I think that's what Bruce and Wendy and I have in mind. Yeah, this meeting came together pretty quickly, but it's okay because it was sort of a recap. And I think next time we'll be going back to the protocols we had in place before, where we'll share the presentation materials in advance with some talking points and whatnot, just so that people can be as ready as possible for the conversation.
Yeah, and we'll include in that, we'll, pose kind of the key questions, key goals that we really want to get through to help you guys start thinking about, okay, what is it that we're going to be asked to answer and how do I get there? So. Bruce, anything to add?
No, I think, people have seen the numbers. That's going to be enough to understand where we're going. Remember, we're ultimately giving a recommendation or at least things to consider for the elected body to make a decision on. And there's sidebars or sideboards, depending on how you say it, on either side. So we know we've got to land this plane somewhere. And so hopefully this group will provide, some of those considerations and recommendations, and then we'll go forward with elected officials as well. And then we also have the benefit to test the waters with stakeholder interviews. So that's, I think, a great thing that works to find out where people are on this issue, because again, I think it was said very well, you can't solve this with data fully. Again, eventually it's about values as well as policy. So, and also being realistic here, what can actually.
Looks like Sky has a question.
Yeah, thank you. It looks like we're going to be talking about a potential 5-fold increase, which doesn't seem like we'll go all that way, but, thinking about how far to go, how to change it. One of the topics that's come up a lot in the past rounds of this is, there's a lot of impact, but it shouldn't all go on development. There's other sectors of the community. We should also be looking at the public funding. We should be looking at philanthropy. So it might be helpful for framing this piece to look at what are those other elements or programs, how much funding is available, how much of this need is being covered, because otherwise we're sort of just talking about it in the abstract that like there are other sectors that should be covering it, but we don't know how much is being covered. So that might be too much to ask, but on the other hand, it might be something that April has handy, and that would really help us in the next phases.
No, Sky, I really appreciate that comment because I agree. I think that's one thing that in particular, April, I'd like to touch base with you before the next meeting too, just to wrap our arms around what piece of the pie that this program fits in your housing program, and then, what other components are doing. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions? Thanks, Ashley, so much for that refresher. And I will help coordinate our dates for our next meetings and get you some PowerPoints ahead of time. If there's anything anybody needs, feel free to reach out to me, questions, thoughts on things you want to see for the next meeting. If something happens to come to mind after this, let me know. I think that is all that we have. Anything else from the team? Thanks, Josh and Tyler, too, for kind of ground truthing some of those building numbers. That's super helpful.
Yeah, we couldn't do it without that input. Thank you.
One other quick thing on that, just looking back, and I'm curious what Tyler thinks about this, is I've seen project durations go way up with the current labor market. And I think especially with interest rates as high as they are, that's probably impacting soft costs pretty significantly. I think there's also kind of a regulatory building inspection element to that too. I mean, we've seen 3 or 4 years ago, we were doing bigger multifamily projects in 18 months, and now it's 24 is kind of a starting point. So we might need to take another look at that 25% on soft costs too.
Agreed. Yeah, we're seeing
trending down by any means.
For sure, we're seeing projects take longer, so your carry costs are more, your soft costs are more, and then that percent return that you had 14 is that, now that's 14% over 2 or 3 years versus 1.5 to 2. So your return is getting hit pretty hard too.
Mhm. Yep, that's a good point. Okay, thank you. All right, well, we'd set aside a couple hours, not knowing how much discussion we might need, but I think I heard a lot of what I needed. And looking forward to some of those inputs. So the appraisals and anything you can share, Tyler and Josh, I appreciate those thoughts. And we'll have some revised numbers to share next time. Maybe you have an extra hour for some coffee.
All right, I appreciate everybody spending the time with us. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.